This is the Hype Squad with Charli McCall, a podcast where women can be full of themselves and brag about what they're good at. Each week, we're going to bring you conversations covering topics like motherhood, life, relationships, business, and everything in between, because anything is possible with your very own Hype Squad. What's up, ladies? Welcome back to the Hype Squad. I'm Charli McCall, your host, and today's episode is with Megan McCall. Megan is a family law attorney who specializes in dissolution of marriage, child custody, child support, and parental relocation. She is now the managing partner of MC Family Law in Plantation, Florida, where she serves clients in South Florida. I am so excited to have Megan on today for a couple of reasons. I have known Megan for a long time. She and I played sports together. We hung out. We were friends all through like middle school, I think it was. And now Megan, it's been a while. It's been a while. And now Megan is actually one of my coaching clients. And I thought it would be really cool to have her on and talk about what her experience with coaching looked like, how she decided to take the leap and try coaching. And I'm just so excited you're here, Megan, and willing to have this vulnerable conversation about something like coaching. So thank you, first of all, for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. We go way back, and I just want to give a big shout out to social media for reconnecting us because, as much as there's a lot of negative that comes out of social media, there is also so much positive. And were it not for social media, there was 15-year span where
at least
probably
longer.
It was a really long time, right? Where we were not in touch. And I'm so incredibly grateful for the algorithm making us cross paths again.
Same. I have watched you on Instagram for years at this point, I feel like, with like music festivals, which we've always had that in common. You just didn't know I did that too. I'm like peeping on you, right? And then your fitness journey. I was also going through my own type of fitness journey, very different from yours, but fitness nonetheless.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I agree with that. The social media, and also, and just to kind of bring this up, I had another group of friends. We were sharing photos from like middle school softball. And it was so funny because I'm looking at it and I'm looking in the corner and I said, holy shit, is that Megan? And so I blew the picture up and I immediately sent it to you. And it was so cool to reminisce about like our childhood together, which is wild. And now we've come full circle. So I just want to dive in, Megan. Like, I want to start from what made you decide to take the leap for coaching? What were you looking for? Because a lot of people don't know what coaching is in reference to like therapy and that type of thing. So what kind of got your head started around coaching?
So the middle of last year, 2023, I was going through a terrible breakup. It was completely life altering. My entire world was upside down overnight. And I have been involved with a therapist off and on since probably 2015. But I tend to only go to therapy when my life is falling apart. When something terrible has happened, some huge transition in my life is happening, and I've used that space to try to process what's going on, to try to get through the rough part. And it had been beneficial to me in the past with previous experiences where I needed, that kind of help and that kind of assistance and somebody to reach out to. But in this most recent breakup, it wasn't serving me in the same ways that it had in the past. And what I mean by that is it wasn't helping me move forward. It was a lot of let's talk about, you know, patterns that got you here and working through your feelings right now. And while I still think therapy is incredibly beneficial, I think everybody should go. I think everybody can benefit from it. I just kind of reached a wall where I wasn't seeing progress or I wasn't getting out of it what I wanted to get out of it. It was a space for me to go and vent for an hour, but and venting was helpful, right? It's especially as a female, that's how we process things is we need to talk through it. And it was great because your friends can only listen to you for so long until you burn them out too, right? And at some point, like, I don't want to put that on my friends. It's not their responsibility. And I tried to be really conscious of that. And it was just a combination of I wasn't getting out of therapy what I wanted. It wasn't moving me forward. It was a lot of digging up stuff out of the past. And while that's so incredibly beneficial because in order to change your patterns going forward, you need to know, you need to be able to identify what those patterns are, but you also need to know where they come from. And but it was a combination, right? So I got to the end of the road with therapy. I didn't want to burn my friends out anymore. Everybody was sick of listening to my shit after months and months. And you your coaching business had just, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was just kind of taking off. You were just kind of launching it. And the algorithm pushed me CMCO. And I was like, And so during our first call, I still wasn't really sure. I think our first call was in August, maybe.
August,
My
yeah.
breakup was the end of June. So now we are, no, the breakup was the end of July. So now we're through, it was still fresh, right? Like within a
Yeah.
month. And I was trying to just figure out my footing. And I knew that I wasn't getting out of therapy what I wanted, but I wasn't ready to pull the trigger yet. Because I didn't really understand at that point what the difference was between the services that you provide and therapy. And it was all still really raw and really uncomfortable at the moment. And I was just trying to keep my head above water at that point. So fast forward another month or so of therapy, and I just had this nagging feeling of like, I'm never going to move my life forward. Therapy is not the correct avenue or route to move things forward. And I was just in this really uncomfortable space of like wallowing in where I was, and I wasn't doing anything to move my life forward. There were concrete things that needed to happen in my life, and therapy wasn't pushing me into those things, or it wasn't pulling me into the next part of my life. It wasn't pulling me into doing things that I needed to do. It was just kind of a space for me to vent. That's the best way I can describe it. But it wasn't, okay, I needed somebody to say, these are the action steps that you need to move your life forward. And I wasn't getting that. And friends weren't doing that for me, nor is it their job to do that for me. My family wasn't really doing that with me, mostly because I was pushing them away. I was creating a lot of space because it was just not comfortable for me to address that with them. So I needed somebody to help me move forward. I needed somebody to say, like, you need to get an apartment and you need to move and you need to like do the things to rebuild your life. And that's really what I came to coaching for. I came to coaching because I needed somebody to, like, for lack of a better term, like, treat me like I'm five, tell me what I need to do, but like, give me, obviously these are steps I need to do, but I needed this support to be able to do it. I needed somebody to just like point me in the right direction. And then after they pointed me in the right direction, I needed somebody to hold me accountable to those things. Like, okay, you said you were going to do this week. Did you do it? In a soft way, not in a I'm a parent and I'm going to tell you what to do kind of way, because ultimately these are decisions that I needed to make on my own and I needed to do on my own, but I needed help doing it. I wasn't in the right headspace to do it on my own.
So I remember us having our discovery call, and I clearly remember like how well you articulated all the things that you had already done that had not worked in your experience with therapy, and you did not sign up right away. Like it was several weeks in between. And I have lots of clients who do that. Like they need to take time and think and get things in order and stuff like that. So I wasn't like, oh, she's never coming back type of thing, but it's just like, you know, when you're ready. Right. And, going back to some of the things you said about coaching, I had my own coaching experience. I actually do a complete solo episode about my coaching experience. And that was what propelled me into, first of all, believing in coaching and how like transformative it can actually be. But also my coach pushed me to become a coach, like in a very separate manner. And it's like you have to have a taste of it, or you have to hear someone else's perspective, which I'm so grateful that you're coming on and sharing yours, because it's scary. It's something that's unfamiliar. I mean, lots of people are scared to do therapy like alone by itself. Like that's a big step. And coaching for women who aren't super familiar with it, it's its own kind of scary. And I say all the time, like therapy and coaching, while they do have a lot of similarities, they are very different in that therapy 100% serves its purpose. And I have multiple clients who work with a therapist and me at the same time. And the biggest thing I have taken away from my own experience with therapy and what I hear my clients say is almost every single person I've ever spoken to, myself included, gets to that stagnant point that you were talking about where there's no accountability or action, like pushing you into action. It's just rehashing the past week or the past 2 weeks. And yes, that serves a purpose, but that also could be served with girlfriends and stuff. So it's like you do hit this threshold of I'm maxed out with therapy. I need something different. And in my opinion, that's a perfect place for coaching because coaching is very like future and action oriented. And the thing I may have even said this on our discovery call, first of all, I consider myself like a cheerleader or a hype girl, but also I say I will light a fire under your ass for change. And it's your choice whether you want to like fan that flame or if you want to put it out, but I will light it for you and I will hold you accountable and I will give you like all the access you could possibly need from me as far as like venting and all of that stuff with like the apps that we use in between. So I love that you kind of recapped all of that because I totally agree. Um, so tell me like how your experience was like once you started coaching. What were your, some of your biggest takeaways, whatever you feel comfortable sharing?
My biggest win right off the bat was moving things forward. I had just been in this very stagnant, like treading water is the best kind of analogy that I can think of. And you moved me from treading water to actually swimming in one direction. And I needed somebody to say, like, you can't sit here and tread water forever. Like, this is not healthy. Like, you got to move. And you got me to move in one direction or another. But I needed that movement. I needed to get out of this sitting still spot that I had been in. And that's kind of what the point that therapy had gotten me to. It had just gotten me to like tread water. Like I had my head above water, but like just barely. And
Mm,
that's not the way to live. It's just not. Like we as humans are designed and programmed for progress and forward movement and whatever that is. Like we're not supposed to be stagnant. And so I needed that move. That was probably my biggest win right off the bat. And then moving forward, it became a safe space for me to toss ideas around. And it's I'm not into journaling. I wish I was. I've tried. I really want to be, but it's just not my thing. But you have to get the thoughts in your head out. And I have I used our relationship and our dynamic as kind of my journaling, right? So I could jump on the app and I could just like word vomit whatever was going on in my head. And that helped me process things, right? So in a lot of ways, it was like verbal journaling, which I think was so incredibly helpful for me to process and to move things forward. And then it was even more helpful to have you point things out that I would say, like that you want to double click on something that I may have said. And I kind of said it in passing, not really giving it a lot of significance or not thinking that that point was particularly important. And then we could dig in on those bigger, deeper things, which led me to some really real like aha light bulb moments. But it was only because of that back and forth kind of conversation that, and sometimes it happens at like 10 o'clock at night, right? Like I'm sitting on the couch and I'm having some thought and I can send you a message and then you can get back to me that night or in the morning or whatever. And that's not something that you can get out of therapy. And I think the, another one, there's multiple reasons why this was better, different than therapy, right? But that contact and that ability to process things, not just during sessions. Because when you have a therapy session, that's great, but now you don't talk to your therapist again for a week or 2 weeks or however, whatever the frequency is. And there's a lot of stuff that comes up in between sessions. And if you're not writing it down in a note in your phone or you're on a piece of paper or whatever, then you lose that and then you don't come back to it. And maybe that was a really huge, important thing that really needed to be dug into. And so, this ability to address, discuss, and dig into things in between sessions, you know, was incredibly invaluable. And some of my most enlightening moments happened not necessarily in our sessions, but in these in between moments where we were in touch.
Mm. Yeah, I actually share that last bit with all of my discovery calls when I'm trying to explain, because it's hard to explain to someone. First of all, video messaging is like a no-go for a lot of people. They're like, no way, I'm not getting on there and talking to my phone and whatever. And so I always explain it in discovery calls with new clients. Like, we use this Marco Polo app and it's better than texting. You can actually talk to me and I talk back and it's convenient and so on and so forth. But one of the things that I always say is that sometimes the biggest transformations happen through that versus the session, because that's life, right? Like, you're not going to save shit hitting the fan for Thursday at 3 o'clock right before your session. That's not real. And there's so much stuff that happens in between. And in my opinion, that's coaching is, that's what we're trying to get at, is like the real moment to moment things that are happening. How do we click into that and get those changes happening? Right. Because either you're going to forget about what happened the day right after, our session, you're going to totally forget and you're going to forget to share. And it was something you really needed to talk about. I remember that in my own therapy journey. Like, well, this shit happened a week ago. Where were you then? Like, I needed this conversation then. And kind of touching back on journaling, I do another separate episode, a solo episode about journaling, where I talk about video journaling. And Marco Polo is that, right? And a lot of people aren't comfortable just videoing out into like, the universe and saving it on their phone. And so sometimes it's imperative for them to be talking to someone that's going to listen. And then sometimes they don't want that. But I always say that video journaling is like top tier type of journaling, because a lot of things are happening when you can see yourself on camera. First of all, if you go back and listen to it, you can hear your tone, you can see your facial expressions change. Like, you really get in touch with how you're feeling when you send the message. But also, and I may have had you do this too, I've done this with a lot of clients. Sometimes I will ask my clients to listen to their Marco and disassociate from it being them, and get some sympathy for what's going on with this woman that they're hearing talk. And you get to know yourself. It's like a zoomed out version of like mirror work. You're getting to know your voice and your face on a level that some people never get to do. And then you have like unlimited access to me in the time that we work together. And that is super valuable in my opinion. And texting, I remember when I worked with my coach, he didn't have a video app. You could just text him, and I'd be damned if I was going to text him my drama. Like, I just did not have time to sit there and text everything. So I just wouldn't like reach out. Right. So I love that you brought that up. That was a huge thing. And I mean, Megan, when I look back over our time working together, because we still work together now, and I'll touch on that real quick. So I say this a lot, like, my goal for my coaching clients is for you not to need me very much, right? Like, the goal is for you two have put in all of these tips and tricks that you learn in our time together to where you just need like maintenance. Like you just need to check in when shit is hitting the fan and you come back. And so you're actually one of my monthly members is what I call like a monthly membership where you've done your intensives, which are like every week, and now you're kind of stretched out to 1 or 2 a month, and it's like maintenance. And then of course if shit hits the fan and you need to go back into an intensive, then you can do that. But to me the goal is for you not to spend every single week with me, because you got to get out there and live, right? You have to get out there and experience everything. And sometimes I feel like when you hyper fixate on growth and change, it can like consume you sometimes. So I think that that's a great representation of like you did your intensives and now you're in your monthly where it's spaced out a little bit more. But when I go back and I think about your journey, Megan, like you have had some incredible, and incredible is not even a big enough word for the change that I have witnessed you go through. And it has been just wild for me to witness and so immensely grateful to have witnessed it. And I want to pay some attention to that because I feel like that's a huge thing that I don't want to skip over is the changes that you've had.
That just like makes me emotional just to think about. Yeah, you caught me at a really bad spot. Not, I was not my best self, that's for sure. Um, and I feel like a completely different person today than when we met. My life had just fallen apart. I was just picking up the pieces. And now I feel like, and I'm emotional not because of that, but just because like looking back on how far I've come, man, we are way past surviving. We are thriving and life is good and we are growing and we are doing big shit, man. And life and the future and things that are coming are so good. But man, it was a very rocky road to get here. And to your point about outgrowing the coach or only needing for maintenance, like I absolutely saw that happen, right? So when we finished our first intensive, and I tried to go to a monthly, we did that for like a week, and for like a week I didn't have you, and I was like, I am not ready for this yet. Like you you were still like my life raft in, you were my little like dinghy that I was holding on to in the middle of the ocean, and I wasn't quite ready to let go of that yet. And so we got to the end of that intensive and I was like, yeah, sure, I can try this on my own. 1 week later, I was like, no, I'm just kidding. Like, we're not ready for this yet. But when we finished the end of the second intensive, that's where I really felt the biggest change. And I was like, yeah, I can do this on my own now. Like, I can live without talking to you for a week, or, I can send you a message if I need you in between. But I got to this very natural place of, especially towards the last 2 or 3 sessions of our second intensive, where I showed up and I was like, okay, my life isn't blowing up or burning down this week. There's no dumpster fires, there's no train wrecks. Like, I'm just okay. Like, I didn't come in with a crisis. And once I got past that and I realized like I can make my own decisions, I can make my own choices. I think you taught me to trust in myself. And for those first two, definitely the first intensive and probably halfway through the second intensive, still didn't trust myself. I didn't trust myself to make decisions. I didn't trust myself that the decisions that I was going to make were the right decisions. And through the course of our two intensives, you taught me how to trust myself. I learned to trust myself. I learned that, you know, there kind of are no bad decisions. Like, the decision that you make is going to just steer your path one way or the other. And then you can make choices based on that. And so I started learning that, like, no matter what choice I make, I'll figure it out. Like, maybe it's not always the best, but ultimately, like, I'm in charge of my own life and I have to figure out how to make these choices on my own. And I learned that no matter what choice I make, I'll figure it out after that. And it really took me getting to that point of trusting myself, trusting my own intuition again, trusting my gut, knowing that, like, rebuilding my confidence before I felt okay to not, like, need you every single week.
Mm-hmm.
And it was such a freeing moment. I remember coming into the end of our second intensive and being like, I think I'm good. Like, maybe I don't need you anymore. No, I'm kidding. Of course I do, because for maintenance purposes, but I definitely got past that, like, feeling like the 1 week in between our two intensives where I didn't have you, I literally felt like I was drowning. Like, I was like, I
Mm-hmm.
can't do this. Like, you know, I need you. And I finally got to this point where I was like, I don't need you. Like, I love talking to you. I value our time. I want to talk to you, but I finally got out of that need feeling that I had for the better part of 16 weeks.
Yeah, I talk a lot about like focusing on self-love and self-power and accountability and things like that. And if I do my job as your hype girl and your cheerleader and your coach, and you do your job as far as like showing up and doing the homework and being accountable, you won't need me. And that's always the goal, right? And I think that's sometimes where therapy, like sometimes when you get stagnant with therapy, it's because you don't need that type of support anymore, but you're still going and no one's calling you out like, hey, I think you've graduated, right? Like something to that degree. But I want to go back on like the homework style thing that I do with my coaching, how I do give you, and I just call it homework for lack of a better word, but things that I want you to go home and to do or to change and and then holding you accountable throughout the week for you to check back in with me, or by our next session you're giving me an update. How was that process for you?
Hard, especially in the beginning. Um, in the beginning, I in the beginning, I did it because I was told to do it and not because I wanted to do it. I didn't see the value in it in the beginning, and that was just because I was in such a terrible headspace. To be honest. Like, I'm like, what is the point of making this list, right? And that's because you could see way down the road, you could see the end of the path, right? The end of the race. And I was like at, mile 1, where I was just like, I can't imagine what mile 23 is going to look like. I don't know what I need to do to get to mile 23. I'm just at this point trying to put one foot in front of the other. So it was tough, but as we progressed and as we spent more time together, I began to see the value. Like, oh, in order for me to rebuild my life, I have to know what I want my life to look like. And the list is to figure out what I want my life to look like. So I really do need to do this because I really do. I saw the value in your homework after the fact. I never
Mhm.
saw it in advance. I never saw it even when I was doing it. But weeks and months later, I can look back and say, "Oh, I get it. I understand that why she wanted me to do that."
Isn't that like the thought process on homework in general? Like if you go back to school and you're like, man, I hated her for giving me that assignment, but I get it now, right? Like, so that I totally resonate with that. And I remember us having, without giving too much away, I remember us having, you and I both having a bit of a breakthrough for you because you had like this one topic, if you will, that you were like, this is my issue. This is what I keep coming back to. And I said, okay, let's back up. Let's go 5 steps before that. And then maybe 5 steps before that. And we had to do a couple of homework assignments until it clicked for you that that subject was not the root problem. The root problem was like a mile before that, which was like the ultimate cause. And then this was just like a reaction. And I remember that being such a pivotal shift for you because it was something that someone else was putting into your head and that you weren't coming up with your own, and you had to really do some soul searching to say, that's not my truth. Like, that's not my story. And I now know myself and this reaction well enough to know that no one else can taint what I know about myself anymore. And I felt like, looking back on our intensives together, that was a huge, like, flag in the ground moment for you that I feel like just brought your power back internally for you. Like, oh no, wait, I am in control of this. This is not what's happening. And I know that's pretty vague to anyone that's listening, but I don't want to give too much away. Um, but I remember that. And there were homework assignments that happened in and around that. And then I remember I gave you one, which I think was like, get off Instagram. And I told you like 5 days or something. No, I think maybe like 1 or 2 days. And you were like, I'm off Instagram for like a year. I'm giving, like, it wasn't a year, but like you came some big, and I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, I get it. We see the need. And then you backed up a little bit and it was more realistic. But little things like that, like the homework is not like predestined. It kind of comes like on a whim in the middle of our session. What do we think is going to be? And then you agree to it, right? Like, we come to this agreement together. Yeah. So I remember that. And I wanted to talk specifically about the homework because that felt like such a big moment of clarity for you.
So, yes. And I have such a distinct memory of that light bulb moment. I was standing in my living room and it hit me. And it was in between one of our sessions. It was actually, I sent you a video message and I was like, I figured it out. And it was like, it was such a big breakthrough moment. And I want to tie this back into the importance of the video sessions. Like, were it not for the video sessions that are in between our regular sessions, like, I might not have gotten them. And that's really kind of, I just think that highlights the importance and the value of that in between time and not limiting things to that 1 hour, session that you have with your therapist or your whatever, because that's not real life. Real life doesn't happen in just an hour. And that was by far our biggest breakthrough. And the most progress that I made was in that in between moment, standing in my living room one night going, oh my God, holy shit, I figured it out, and and it was also because of the homework that got me there, right? It was not you and I having a discussion in one of our sessions where it came out. It was a moment that I got to on my own. And I think there's a lot of power in that, in getting to something on your own versus somebody convincing you of something or somebody talking you into something. It was a realization that I came to all on my own. And there's that, I think, also contributes to helping rebuild your self-trust and rebuilding your intuition and believing in yourself again, because you figured that thing out on your own. And that's really powerful.
Mm, so powerful. So powerful. Um, so I mean, would you recommend coaching for people that you know? Is this something that you would push people to do for themselves? How do you feel about that?
10,000%. Just like I think that everybody can find some value and can benefit from therapy. I think everybody can benefit from coaching. And whether that's, not everybody comes to you in the capacity that I did, which was on the heels of a terrible breakup and my life is falling apart and I need to like figure out how to basically start over from scratch. Like, there's so much more to this container, to use your word. um you know and I'm a perfect example of that, right? So I came in under one kind of umbrella, and then through the course of our relationship, coaching has turned into a different kind of service. Like, we have gone from very much so focusing on personal life and relationship and building self-confidence, and to now it's kind of segued into a little bit of business coaching. And so I think that this service is so valuable because it's also you're super versatile. So you're not locked in. Like, this isn't just for people who, like, you're not a breakup coach, you're not a relationship coach, you're not just a sex coach, you're not just a business coach, right? And having the ability to um come to you in many different facets in many different areas of life is what I think makes this so valuable. Like, I never in a million years would have envisioned this going from what it was in August to what it is now. Like, I never in a million years thought that you would serve also as a business coach and kind of mentor as a business owner. But I think, yes, it's valuable for anybody and everybody because nobody's personal life is perfect all the time. Nobody's work life is perfect all the time. And so you can come in whatever capacity it is and and have somebody to help listen to you and guide you and to not to burn your friends out, right? So we all, especially as women, right? Like, we like to talk and we like to use our friends, and they only have, so much emotional capacity to handle our shit, right? Like, they have their own shit going on. And so this is super valuable because it takes the burden off of your friends or your family or whoever it is that you go to lean on. But it's a different capacity than therapy because it helps move you forward. So I hope this is making sense. But yes, absolutely. I
Yeah.
think this is valuable for anybody and everybody, no matter what the issue is in your life, right? Like, again, we're wired for progress and we're wired for forward movement. And everybody gets to a sticky point in their life where something just feels like it's not right. And this helps launch you into whatever the next thing is, or to help you to figure out what your next step is.
Yeah. And I've said a couple of times, like, I have a coach. My husband has a coach. My business partner had a coach when we were in business. Like, my life has been so heavily influenced in such positive, like, transformative ways that I see the benefit across the board. It's just hard sometimes to get people to take that leap. But I do, going back to what you said about not leaning on your friends, your coach is like, especially like if it's a female and you can be like girlfriends, right? It is like the best one way friendship I feel like you'll ever have because I'm not sharing really anything with you. Like, I'll give you some experience shares if I think that they are relevant. But outside of that, like, you don't have to do this back and forth of, okay, I've talked about myself for 20 minutes. Now your turn. But like, I can't wait for you to be finished because I have more shit I need to share type of thing.
Yes, yes, that.
Or your other friend feeling like, all she does is talk about herself. Damn, you see what I'm saying? Like, it's really hard and it's very stressful for your friendships, also for your partners, because some of us rely on our partners to fulfill that need. And sometimes that can be a negative thing as well. So it's like your best friend in your corner who's like gonna call you out on your shit, right? Like, I'm not here to coddle you. I'm gonna call you on your shit and I'm going to challenge you and I'm gonna light that fire. But it's on you. So I was really happy that you brought up the fact that you had that aha moment all on your own because I'm not holding your hand, right? Like, I'm not in the room with you having these conversations. Like, you are the one doing the hard things. I'm just supporting you and challenging you. And so I think that when you have a coach in your corner, whether it's a fitness coach or a macro coach or a business coach or a life coach, whatever it may be, that's what's so good about a coach in general is you're good, they're trying to make you better type of thing. Um okay, so it's the hype squad. So I want to ask you to share two of the things off your hype list, which this was like one of your very first assignments that I had you do. I just didn't call it a hype list back then. Now I like have a name for it. But an achievement and an obstacle that you overcame to achieve that.
Achievement in the coaching space. relevant to what we're talking about, I would have to say what's most recent, right, is rebuilding my life. And that has been huge is, I had a whole identity that was wrapped up in a relationship. I had a whole identity that was wrapped up in what I thought my future life was going to look like. And that was a hard left turn that happened last year. And now I have a whole new identity. I have started a business and I have my own life again. And that was, you know, that's a huge accomplishment to come from. I mean, I was literally like in a puddle on the floor when I came to you, and you helped scrape me off the floor, but ultimately I rebuilt my life. Um, and that has been a huge, my life is 180 degrees from where I was last year. I never in a million years would have envisioned that I would be where I am today a year ago. If you had asked me where I would be a year ago now, it could not look more different. So I think that was really huge.
Mm, I love that. Megan, thank you so much for coming and being so vulnerable about your experience. It has made me feel all kinds of ways, like hearing that straight from your mouth. I have loved that. And yeah, I really enjoyed this. I always enjoy my time with you. Like I love working with you, but I also just love having these moments where we can just like chit chat and I don't have to like light a fire under your ass.
Charli, I cannot say enough good things. I think you did a really good job of describing it as a one-way friendship. Because you're right, there's a lot of guilt that comes with coming and dumping this on your friends. And you go to brunch and you're like, okay, now I've talked about myself for 45 minutes and now I feel obligated. And there's no sense of obligation here. And that completely changes the landscape. So thank you. I think that the service that you're providing is amazing, and I think everybody should do it.
Well, I am so grateful to have supported you and watched your journey. It has been um, one of the biggest gifts that I've ever had. So thank you for the opportunity and thank you for trusting when you didn't even know what this was going to be like. And you jumped off that cliff head first and dove in. And I thank you for that. Thank you for trusting me with that. So I'm going to put all of the details about how to get in contact with Megan, especially if you need a family lawyer, or if you just want to follow along on social media. I'll put all of that in the show notes. And thank you, everyone, for coming to get hyped with us today and hearing Megan's story. I'm so grateful you're here. And Megan, you got to come back soon. I loved this.
Thanks, Charli. I appreciate it.
All right. We'll see you next time.